Hi, my name is Kat, and today I'm going to do my September wrap-up. So September was a pretty good reading month for me. I didn't get through my entire intended TBR, but I did read 8 books. And I'm still on track with my 100 book challenge. Actually, I'm 3 books ahead right now, currently, so that's nice. But I do need to step it up a little bit this month because I'm not planning to read a whole lot in November so I can focus on NaNoWriMo. But yeah, let's talk about September. First, though, I want to quickly apologize for not posting any reviews last month and kind of slacking on the vlog front altogether. Real life, man, it really cuts into my vlogging time. Also, I actually filmed a couple of reviews and then the footage got corrupted and I lost it all and it was a big traumatic fiasco and I'm not ready to talk about it yet. I am going to refilm a discussion video for the Heroes of Olympus series because so many of you guys want to see that. But unfortunately, I just don't have the time or, quite frankly, the desire to refilm all the other ones, so hopefully this wrap-up will do. Alright, let's get it on! Let's get it on. Am I hitting on you? Yes. Yes, I am. So I started this month by reading the first 3 books in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. Book 1, The Lost Hero. Book 2, The Son of Neptune. And Book 3, The Mark of Athena. Like I just said, I will be making a discussion video on this series, so I'm not going to talk about these books right now, except to say that I loved them so very much. The 4th book, House of Hades, is coming out next week, and I'm so very excited and also kind of nervous because, oh my goodness, is shit about to go down. Moving on, the other 5 books that I read this month were all, get this, standalones. And only one of them was a non-fantasy standalone. Crazy, I know. So first I read The Chaos of Stars by Kiersten White. This is a young adult fantasy novel about a girl named Isadora who is the mortal daughter of immortal Egyptian gods, and she kind of resents her parents for not making her immortal as well. She figures if they really loved her, then they would want to keep her around forever with them. So when she gets the chance to move from Egypt to California, she leaves her family behind, never planning to return, wanting to just move on with her short mortal life. But when she realizes her family is in danger, she has to decide if she can really turn her back on them after all. I enjoyed this story and I really like Kiersten White's books, but I must say this is my least favorite of hers so far. Mostly because I found the main character Isadora to be a very difficult character to like, especially in the beginning. I do understand her perspective to an extent, but I felt like she was just too stubborn and extreme about it. Maybe it's because of my old age, but she just came off like an ungrateful, bratty teenager, and it made it really hard for me to like her. That being said, it's certainly not a bad book. Kiersten White's writing style is very engaging and flows very well. And I did really like the Egyptian mythology sprinkled throughout the book, though I could have done with some more world building. I do have some unanswered questions. Bottom line, if you're a fan of Kiersten White's writing, or you really like Egyptian mythology and you're looking for just a quick, light, fun read, give this book a go. But otherwise, I would recommend her other books over this one. Next up, I have Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This is a young adult coming-of-age story about a girl named Kath, who is a huge fangirl of the Simon Snow series. She's actually one of the most popular fan fiction writers for the series, with her stories getting thousands and thousands of hits. Kath has a twin sister named Ren, who is also a fan of the series, but while Ren is kind of growing out of it, Kath just doesn't want to leave it behind. As they enter their first year of college, Ren and Kath start to drift apart a little bit, and Kath ends up kind of on her own and out of her comfort zone as she struggles to figure out who she is without Simon Snow or her twin sister. And does she even want to figure it out if it means leaving behind this fandom that means so much to her? I absolutely adored this book. It was so sweet and funny and romantic. Rainbow Rowell is quickly becoming one of my favorite young adult contemporary authors, right up there with John Green and Stephanie Perkins. Kath is such a relatable character. I saw so much of myself in her, particularly the social awkwardness and the fangirling. The Simon Snow series is kind of like the Harry Potter series, and that is what I grew up with. That's the series that impacted my life so much, the series that I had to say goodbye to as I was growing up. Not that I'm a grown-up, don't get any silly ideas. But yeah, this book was just fantastic. Beautifully written, with wonderful, realistic characters, and so many great scenes, particularly surrounding the very cute romance. And I just loved the Simon Snow excerpts that we got to see. Even though we only get little snippets, it still added a lot of depth to the story, like a whole nother layer. Overall, I enjoyed this even more than I enjoyed Eleanor and Park, and I really loved that one. I would recommend this book to anyone who has ever identified themselves through a fandom, or really just anyone who enjoys cute, contemporary, coming-of-age stories. Next, I read Vicious by V.E. Schwab, who you may also know as Victoria Schwab. This is an adult fantasy novel, and it's basically the story of two sociopaths with supernatural abilities and killer grudges against one another. Victor and Eli are college roommates, working on a thesis surrounding the idea that a near-death experience could cause someone to develop an extraordinary ability. But when theory turns into experimentation, things go horribly wrong. So now, a decade later, Victor is released from jail, and he is determined to stop Eli, who has been killing other people with abilities all this time. Fueled by betrayal and revenge, both men prepare to face each other once and for all. This book was fantastic. It's definitely not your typical superhero story. In fact, neither of them are really heroes. They're just two men with conflicting points of view, both right and so very wrong in their own ways. As one character says, there are no good men in this game. I especially love Victoria Schwab's writing, and the characters, while not exactly likable, were so very compelling and interesting. Even though this is a standalone, I would really love to see more in this world, not even necessarily a sequel. There's a short story set in this world called Warm Up that you can read for free online, and I read that and I loved it. If Victoria were to write like a collection of short stories set in this world, I would be all over that. Next, I read Plain Kate by Erin Bow. This novel takes place in a medieval-esque fantasy world full of superstitions and curses. The main character, Kate, is an orphaned woodcarver. So talented, she has earned the nickname Witchblade, which isn't exactly a good thing when witches are hunted down and burned. So when her village starts looking for someone to blame for their downfalls, their eyes land on Kate, and she ends up trading her shadow to a man named Lene for a means of escape. But Kate soon realizes that Lene has much darker motives than she ever thought, and she must get her shadow back from him before he uses it to fuel his destructive vengeance. This was a very well written and atmospheric novel that really pulls you into this fantasy world, and oh man, that ending will hit you right in the feels. However, I did have some trouble connecting to the characters. I never felt like I really got to know them, and that stopped me from being like super invested in the story. But I did enjoy it, and I did really appreciate that things were much more complex than they first seemed. Things weren't evil and good, black and white, it was all a bunch of gray. I especially enjoyed the talking pet cat, Taggle. He was such a fantastic character, hilarious and adorable, and it really made me want a pet cat. Even though I'm allergic, I would suffer through the sneezes if I could have a companion as cool as Taggle. It's not really a scary book, but it does have some nice spooky and dark elements. I think this would make a pretty good Halloween read if you're into that kind of thing. And finally, my favorite of these standalones, maybe even my favorite of the month, it's very close, Rick Riordan, watch your back. I read The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. I freaking loved this book. It's set in kind of an alternate present day, which is just like our world, except 10 years ago there was a huge vampire outbreak. And to kind of control this outbreak, several cities were quarantined to keep the vampires contained. Outside of the cold towns, vampires are stalked by bounty hunters. But inside the quarantined cities, vampires have a pretty sweet afterlife. They have willing and unwilling humans to provide blood, and they get to have massive wild parties that are live streamed all over the world. In this story, we follow a girl named Tana who wakes up after a party only to find that everyone has been massacred by vampires. The only people left alive are her and two boys tied up in chains. One is her ex-boyfriend who is infected but not a full vampire yet, and the other is a vampire boy that she doesn't know. Tana, who might actually be infected herself, she's not really sure, ends up saving these boys, and together they head toward the nearest Coldtown, because that's really the only place for them to go now. This is a standalone fantasy done right. So right. I really enjoyed how the story unfolded, with some chapters set in the past to develop the world and the characters. I think the world is just amazing. It's so well built. One reason I feel like series tend to be more popular than standalones is because you have more room to develop the characters in the world. But this book does not suffer at all for being a standalone. It is fully fleshed out and so well developed and completely satisfying and just really, really cool. It's exactly what I wanted from the premise. I just loved how this book played around with the glamour and the horror of vampires. You have characters like Tana, who has had very negative experiences with vampires and does not want to be one at all. But then you have other characters who are kind of seduced by the fantasy. They willingly enter the Coldtowns with the hopes of being infected. Bottom line, if you like vampires at all, you should read this book. Even if you're kind of tired of vampires, I would still recommend giving this a shot. It's seriously one of the best vampire books I've ever read, one of the best standalones I've read, and just overall a great book. Recommended. Alright, there you have it. Those are the books that I read in September, and that is it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great night, and I will have another video soon, so I will see you then. Goodbye! I'm hitting on you. How you doing? You wanna go out to dinner sometime? See a movie, maybe? A book to movie adaptation? Next, I read... Ooh, it almost flew out of my hand. Do you hear that plane? Plane, go away. Seriously, stop. Oh my god, there's a bug in here and it's driving me freaking crazy. I want to kill it with fire. Ta!